Yes, indeed, it is time for another installment of Classic Wax, brought to you by the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Welcome in. Hope you're all having a nice afternoon. Hope you got to check out the show this morning, the Daily Deep Cut. Been listening to the Kinks a little bit today. I know that I have enjoyed that very much. Also dove into that new Ethel Cain project. We're going to be talking about that a little bit, and I'm going to be kicking out a review sometime tonight or tomorrow. It was a lot. I definitely had to take a break after listening to that record. I'd argue it's worth it. We will get into it. But if you're not familiar with the show, please like the channel, subscribe, share this video, do all the things to help me out, and I'll help you out by giving a rundown of what's going on. Since it is the first new episode of the year, and some of you are probably new to this, pick an album of the week. The Classic Wax rules are basically that the album has to be released on the day that I do the show, January 8th. Normally I do the show on Tuesday. I wasn't feeling great yesterday. I will say it does feel a little serendipitous that things kind of went down this way, because the other rule, I'm breaking it. I'm breaking it tonight. We are talking about David Bowie and Blackstar. We're going to remember him on his birthday on the ninth anniversary, of the release of Blackstar. Normally the record needs to be 20 years or older, but this record, I would argue, was an instant classic from the moment we were all able to listen to it and to enjoy it. And so I want to talk about it. It's a record that I know a lot of David Bowie fans, including myself. It took me a minute before I was able to go back and enjoy this record after his death. I certainly will say that. But getting that first couple of listens in before finding out about his passing, being able to absorb this record, I guess, with him still here and with him gone, made for a very different experience. If you followed along with the lyrics, you could certainly tell that there was this impending sort of feeling of one's own mortality, of having to come to terms with that. And, I think a lot of us kind of saw it as maybe a signal that something was going down. I don't think any of us expected to lose him 2 days after. But it's a beautiful record, and I'm excited to get into it tonight. I'm excited for it to be the album of the week, because it certainly deserves that accolade. But I want to start off with this new record from Ethel Cain, because it definitely ties into what's going on with David Bowie with his last record. The idea of, I guess, reinventing oneself before your passing, your final swan song, the one artistic moment that, it's not like Blackstar truly defines everything about David Bowie in his career, but I think the shift in style kind of signals the shift in where he was at as far as his human form and moving on. The man that fell to earth from us went back up to the sky. He's just incredible, the way that he lived his life, and even in his death. His death was still an incredible piece of art. But Ethel Cain here, an artist much like David Bowie, I feel, in regards to the fact that you could loosely use the term pop to describe what they're doing. There's certainly influences there that drive that. And we've always talked about it on the channel. It's not a negative thing. I don't think there's that negative a connotation attached to pop music. At least I don't use it anyway. I don't talk about pop music to slight it. I think that the idea of what is popular, what sounds pleasing to the ears, what people like, is something that every artist has pursued in the creation of music, the development of compositions. And I would argue that these are more compositions than they are songs. I know I use that word interchangeably a lot. I feel like it's easy to do, but there's something about the direction of this record, where Bowie was going, that it's much like what Ethel Cain is doing on this record. These are, and I'm going to take this even further, these are more than just compositions too, I'd say that these are meditations. These are vast experiments in noise rock in the use of sound and the way that it can become evocative, the way it can stir our emotions and dictate our moods, take us to certain places. And what I love about her is she is the type of artist that doesn't really give a damn. I mean, it's pretty shocking listening to this new record from Ethel Cain, Perverts. I don't think it's what fans of hers expected at all whatsoever. There's certainly lovely moments on this album that are worth the payoff with the experimental stuff. I would argue that it's worth listening to for that reason. I think that you need to set yourself up for 90 minutes. It's not just something that you can throw on. You really need to find a pocket of time in your week or maybe even your month. I wouldn't necessarily rush into this experience. I know that in the past, Ethel's made records that they're accessible and they do have that light pop influence, and her voice is gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning and certainly working well on this record, but there's a lot of off-putting. It's basically just spoken word and very compressed as far as the sound and the production. I mean, you can barely understand what she's saying, but the exploration of everything, I would say, in the last few years since releasing her last record, this thing, it opens up with Perverts, and with Preacher's Daughter, her last record, and there's so much that alludes to her Baptist upbringing. She's been very vocal about that, and I do appreciate the way that she speaks about the idea of, I don't even want to call it spirituality, I would just say the unknown, the afterlife. Let's just put it that way. I don't think that she's in church every Sunday. I wouldn't expect to see her there, but the two big things that she talks about are, using the teachings that are used in pretty much all religions, right? I think that I was talking about one of my English professors, John Ulrich, the other day, the didactic principles of the Bible. That was my senior seminar. And it's a book of parables. It's a book of lessons, stories designed to teach us how to live in just a proper manner, how to live ethically and morally. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. You don't have to take the book literally. You don't have to take everything for what it is. There are lessons there that are designed to guide us. It's a user guide to the world, so to speak. And so I appreciate her perspective on that, her open-mindedness, especially because politically she got a little extreme here recently. I don't condone violence in any way, shape, or form. And so listening to her discuss some of those issues, a little frustrating. I get why she's frustrated. I just think that making an album like this versus getting on the social medias and, emoting there is, I feel that oftentimes we get too worked up and we lose our equanimity when we hit the social media, and often end up typing things that are too extreme, things that are regretful, things that don't reflect really who we are and how we feel. And I might argue that, the words were intense, but I don't think she genuinely means that. But this record, coming off of Preacher's Daughter, which very accessible, opens up with Perverts, and Perverts is about, let me just check this out here. This is about 12 minutes long, mostly just drone work. And there's this vocal element that appears in the first part of the song, and the lyrics aren't there, or I haven't been able to find them anyway. This album just came out today. But further into the song, as you get more of this use of space, it almost kind of sounds like the vacuum of space, that airy sort of texture, that atmospheric quality that drives the song. And "Heaven has forsaken the masturbator" is the line that is repeated pretty much throughout this song. It's very simple. There's not much lyrically here. Heaven has forsaken the masturbator, and then she says, "No one you know is a good person." Just flat out going into some dark space. Heaven has forsaken the masturbator. It's happening to everybody. Really intense and almost just scary. There's some critics. There's some critics that when I was reading about the record while I was listening to it, someone was just flat out like, man, is she trying to scare us? Like, what the hell is she trying to do? And I will say this record is intense. There are moments where it is slightly terrifying, but I think the exploration of those feelings, of those sounds, and the way that they're I always criticize people that use the word and poke fun of them, but the way that they're juxtaposed with, songs like Punish, songs like Vacillator, Etienne is another track. That that Torchia, I think is how you say that. I should have looked that up before we got into this. But those songs, they are lighter, they are melodic. She is demonstrating, all of her vocal talents in those songs. Just beautiful soaring vocals, and the lyrics are certainly quite impressive as well. Punish is whatever's wrong with me, I will take to bed. I give in so easy. Nature chews on me. Little death like lead. Poisonous and heavy. It has always been this way. It has always been this way. I am punished by love. And when she sings that, like the anguish that you hear is so intense. So I really enjoyed her passion in this record. And while I will admit it was a lot, I definitely had to pause halfway through and just take a break with it. But it reminded me a lot of what Sufjan Stevens was doing with Convocations, what John Frusciante was doing with his most recent record. This idea of, channeling your emotions, not even necessarily through melody and through form, but through textures, through atmosphere, through sound, and fleshing out a composition, really just seeing where the use of those sounds takes your emotions as the track progresses. And I'd argue, 12 minutes does seem a tad bit long, but at the same time, it's if you cut it short, then you don't get the intensity of that feeling. I feel that the experience is cut short. And so I would say that, give this record a go around, give it that time, reserve it that time and place where, you can deal with it. You can cope with what is about to go on, because it's not going to be this, lighthearted, fun experience. It's going to challenge you, but that's straight up what she is trying to do with this record. She's trying to challenge all of us. I think that as a goal, as an artist, if you want to spend your whole career doing that, or from time to time you want to venture out and work with a record and see what people are made of, I'm all about it. And I think that that's what makes this record worthwhile. Getting into our album of the week, nice little transition into someone in David Bowie who, again, was trying to redefine his form. And I love that this particular record, the players on it are just incredible. They're so downplayed in the Wikipedia, but I mean, it's like, oh, this like local New York jazz quartet. It's like, oh my goodness. No, these guys, Donnie McCaslin on the saxophone, works on the flute on this record as well. He is remarkable. And knowing that David Bowie is such a incredible sax player himself, and it makes sense that he brings someone else into the studio, given the way they recorded this record, having that just a couple of live takes and just the free form flow, letting the music kind of evolve and do its thing. But what an honor he must have felt, having David Bowie, ask him to be a part of this. Bowie had worked with him before, so he knew what he was getting into. The songs "Sue" or "In a Season of Crime" and "'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore," but it's his performance on this record is outstanding. The solo work that he does, when he's using his instrument to just maybe move in the swell of instrumentation that is working so often in these songs. Mark Juliana on drummer, a phenomenal drummer. I mean, some of the tempos, the fills, the things that he's doing on his kit are so impressive. Piano, Jason Lindner, and bass, Tim Lefebvre. Just a remarkable lineup of musicians working with David Bowie, and I love I love the improvisational feel of this album. I think that for a guy who worked mostly in rock and roll throughout his career, watching this shift and knowing that he has the potential, basically operating as a band leader on this record. I would say that, he's no longer a front man. He is a band leader on this project and working with that jazz form. He's incorporated jazz, experimented with jazz in his music for a number of years, for decades. But actually seeing him make experimental jazz is what makes this record so exciting, in my opinion. And just the way the compositions are, they're just so exciting. They keep you on the edge of your seat because you just don't know what twists and turns they're going to take. I think Bowie's vocals on this record, the personal nature of the lyrics certainly make for an intense experience. Again, you follow along the allusions to death, the allusions to mortality, and trying to, I will say come to terms with it, but I do feel like the creation of this project was Bowie's way of coming to terms with that. It's this he's going through this transitional period literally in his physical form, and his body of work, I guess, followed along with that. And so I've always just felt that was so unique about this record, working with Tony Visconti as well, longtime collaborator. So I would argue that, just a man that he has known and trusted for decades, and some amazing players that, weren't just, they were recruited because they weren't rock and roll players. And that was the goal with this record, to not just make a rock and roll record, but to do something career defining. I'm not going to say it's one of the best records that Bowie ever put out, but with regards to the circumstances surrounding it and the artistic growth displayed, especially coming off The Next Day, there were hints of that growth there. But this album's arguably the most experimental thing he ever did in his career. I will argue that. I know that this is a man who's really done some pretty far out stuff in his time, but Blackstar, it could very well take the cake for being the most experimental, most adventurous record that David Bowie ever put out. Not the best, but the most adventurous for sure. Influenced by Kendrick Lamar as well. And I love that Kendrick keeps coming up these days. I'll never get sick of the guy. To Pimp a Butterfly, the freeform flow of that record as well, the jazz influence. So much there that Bowie and Tony were just absorbing and inspired by during the creation of this. Death Grips, another band as well. It's very influential through this process for the guys. So I just talking earlier about the nature of this record and the people I know and how they've treated it over the years. I know a handful of people that I don't think they've still listened to this record in the aftermath of Bowie's death. They excuse me, they would, for whatever reason, didn't listen to it in the first couple of days. And then when they received the news, sorry guys, got a little parched there. When they received the news, it was just so shocking. And there was this level of, I can't do it because I don't want to admit that he's gone. I don't want to admit that this is the last David Bowie record. And it's a record that it took me a while to get into the feeling, to the desire of wanting to listen to it, because I just remember not even being able to listen to Heroes without crying for like a year. I know it sounds so ridiculous, but every time the song came on, this guy, his artistry, what he represented, not just with his music, but who he was as a person, and how, he just never compromised. He did things his own way right up until he, the very last day he took his last breath. And it's wild too. You look at those pictures that came out of him, and he just seems so full of life. He's got that big old, just like smiley look, and he feels like he's coming right at you. And, and a few days later he's gone. It's just such a weird turn of events, and it seems so bizarre because it happened that fast. But if you're one of those people, I would encourage you to go back to this record. Push play, come to terms with what has happened, come to terms that we have lost him, and be happy that he was here that he did fall to earth and he gave us all of these incredible records over the years, because this one, it is so unique. Opening up with Blackstar the way that it does, the title track, the exploration of sound in that 10 minutes, the music video that accompanies it is incredible as well. But I love the two-part nature of Blackstar, of the opening composition and the way they come together. I mean, I don't know if you'd categorize the middle part of the song as a middle eight. It's, it's probably like a 4 or 5 minute middle eight, if you want to call it that. But knowing that this was meant to be a two-part composition, and the way they ultimately brought it together, the ebb and the flow of it, the exploration. This is a song that does, in a lot of ways, it feels like it represents the transition. It feels like, what you might be hearing when, the kaleidoscope starts turning and we start hitting the tunnel. I don't know. I don't know what it's like. It's, it's the greatest mystery of all time. What happens to us when we go? But the twinkly arpeggiated riff that opens up, that little bit of flute that's there, and I love David's soaring vocal and just the frenzied breakbeat. The drums are just crazy on this opening track in the beginning. I absolutely love what Mark is doing on the skins with that. The strings develop texture in the song. And then as the song continues to progress, the drums, they adopt more of this sci-fi electronic feel. They really just take on more of a pulsating feel. And then, drifting into that spooky, shapeless song. Like there's this moment where the song loses form in this darkness. But then I love that turn towards a peaceful, twinkly, vocal-driven middle. Just the saxophone that's playing there as well, the piano, the percussion that's just driving and turning. I mean, it's just, it's one thing after another. It just comes at you 100 miles an hour. I just can never get enough of it. It's brave to open up a record with a 10-minute track, but when it comes to jazz, I feel like it's fairly common. Rock and roll David Bowie, maybe not, but experimental jazz Bowie, this makes absolute sense. You get this mid-tempo percussion again that really is just taking this song and steering it in so many fun directions. Returns to that feel, the melodies in the beginning, the instrumentation that the song opened with, to close it out for the last few minutes, with simpler percussion though, and I like that. I like the way that the intensity of the drums backs off. It really allows the funk of the bass that comes up to shine through, as well as the swell of strings that are worked there. It's really just a remarkable song. It may be one of the best offerings song-wise that Bowie has put up. Definitely within years, but it's a top-tier track, I would say, throughout his catalog. Given every record he's ever made, Blackstar is something else as a track. Your second song, "'Tis a Pity," got the driving percussion to open. I love the production that's there on the drums when this track opens. Funky bass with jazzy saxophone and the piano that's in that backdrop there. I really just dig the layers that are unfolding as this song progresses. The saxophone solo is so mean on this song, and I really just, given that it's a re-recording, I love the way that the energy is picked up on this particular recording of the song. I like that Bowie featured it on the album and just gave it that little bit of extra drive, that little bit of extra life. And that certainly is due to the other four players that David Bowie, brought aboard to work on this record. Lazarus, your third song, is you got these loose drums and this ominous riff with lighter guitar textures. I really like the feeling of this song. It reminds me so much of Joy Division. Honestly, I'll throw it out there. It's got this post-punk feel, and really just dark, ominous, and it captures the aesthetic of film noir as well. It's just doing all these things at the same time. But I really like the lighter guitar textures that provide some dissonance. There's that contrast there, and I feel that's a big theme on this album as well too. The dissonant feeling of knowing and fearing the impending nature of death. I think the biggest reason that we do fear it is because we don't know what happens. But there's also there's times when I know personally when I'm reflecting on the thought of it, when I'm thinking of people who are gone, there is this, it's not like I want to die, but there is this part of me that has accepted that it's something that everybody has to go through. And there is this curiosity. There is this lighter side of me that is like, like there's, you never know. Like, you never know what could be on the other side. Maybe there is this peaceful Valhalla awaiting all of us, and we're able to see our loved ones and be reunited. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it really sounds kind of hokey and maybe cheesy a little bit, but if that's the case, if that's ultimately what happens and where we go, then that's incredible. That's amazing. And talking about Ethel earlier, I think that what I like about her perspective, because I don't think I mentioned the second point. I like the idea that religion and her experience didn't just cut her off from the idea of considering the great beyond. Like, I think atheism is just the dumbest thing in the world, to just think that, and it's possible that is the case. It's possible that we just die and that's it and there's nothing else. But I hate to think that. And I think the universe is too mysterious and too majestic. And all of this is just so random and crazy, floating around on this big old rock around a big old exploding ball of gas. And just knowing that up and down and everywhere around is infinity. I mean, I don't see how it's it. I don't see that, this is the end of the line. That's just me personally. But I think that it's also one of the things that makes being alive so compelling, the exploration of those thoughts, of those ideas, coming to one's, own terms and beliefs on, through that exploration. And so it's, to get back to Lazarus, and the title there, if you're not familiar with Lazarus, dead for 4 days, Jesus brings him back to life, one of the miracles. And it's certainly meant to not be just literal, but also, there is the figurative, the idea of the soul, the rebirth there, rising into the heavens, or, finding the afterlife in that peaceful place that, I think there's a lot of that optimism and that feeling in this record, despite the dark moments, but just a great balance of the two. Sue, or In a Season of Crime, guitar, and the intro, I love the way the intro of the song. It's a perfect example of rock and roll meets jazz, meets a little bit of hip hop too. I feel this is one of those tracks where you can feel the influence of these guys listening to Pimp a Butterfly. But the guitar on the song is just amazing. I absolutely love it. And I think more so you get a jazz composition. All these songs, I would argue, are more jazz than rock and roll. But I really love the way that they come together. Especially there's a little bit of industrial flair along with that hip hop element too. And again, a song that's been previously recorded, but just gets more energy, gets more life with these players and the live recording process of this record. Girl Loves Me is your fifth song, which features James Murphy from LCD Sound System, was hanging out with David Bowie and Tony and the boys while they were recording this record. I do believe, he also played on Sue in a Season of Crime as well, so the previous song that we just discussed. But James Murphy on drums there, and I love that. I love that connection. Murphy working with Arcade Fire, David Bowie loving Arcade Fire. Yeah, of course, match made in heaven. This makes sense. Really cool that he was able to contribute to this record. I'm sure that'll probably go down as one of the highlights of his career when all is said and done, being able to be in the recording studio with David Bowie on this project. I know that for these players, for me personally, had I had that privilege, that honor, it's something that I would reflect on quite fondly and talk about quite a lot for the rest of my life. But Girl Loves Me, big, bright, reverb-driven vocal. I love the thumping bass and the breakbeat. The percussion, again, is just so remarkable from Mark. I think he shines on this record. It harbors this spooky but playful sci-fi mood. And the hook, it definitely... I'm not used to Bowie dropping F-bombs, but It's this song just threw me off with the "Where the Fuck Did Monday Go" hook. But it catches your attention. I think there's moments on this record where the songs do become meditative. They do become this swirled frenzy of instrumentation coming together and moving, instruments just moving around one another. And it's really easy to find yourself in a trance. And this is one of those moments where he just like jars you back to life. And I love that quality about this song and those other moments on the record when that does happen. Your sixth song, your penultimate track, Dollar Days. Piano and guitar that has this ambient desert rock. I love the tone of the guitar on this particular song. It pairs well with the saxophone that works in, just a great combination of sounds that are working on those instruments. Breezy acoustic guitar that becomes the prominent feature of the song in this pocket. But I love the way that it takes this synth-driven sci-fi turn, and then it's going to go back to that opening series of melodies there. So the back and forth there is amazing. The sax solo on this song is incredible as well. Donnie doing some really nice work. Coda goes big with the saxophone and the guitar, and just the refrain of "I'm trying to, I'm dying to, I'm trying to, I'm dying to." Bowie keeps singing that, and it's so tense. That's one of those lines where I remember listening to this record when I was first able to do it after his passing, and I just had to pause it. I just had to give myself a moment with the intensity of those lyrics, the simplicity, but the back and forth and the wordplay and the allusions there just are a lot. It's a pretty remarkable moment on the record. Electronic drums hit in the last 10 seconds to usher in "I Can't Give Everything Away." It's the last song that you basically ever hear from David Bowie. It's quite the title, and you don't have to, Dave. You gave us everything that you could, and so much more. I think even at times, maybe more than you needed to. But wavy synths ride the harmonica that he's bringing to the table. Like, I love the harmonica that he's playing on the track. It's got this just great beat. And these synths create this oceanic kind of just soaring, airy mood that is very intoxicating. It just draws you right in. The vocal seems subdued when it starts, but I love the way that it opens up, and I love the way it just gets bigger and brighter as this song progresses. And again, your final track, "I Can't Give Everything Away." I think I speak for most David Bowie fans, if not all of them, that you gave us all that we needed, David. And I think that the influence of this man, of this record, is something that will resonate with me for the rest of my life. I think that he is a guy that generations from now, kids will still speak about him. And I don't think in the way that a lot of other rock stars will carry on. I think David Bowie, in his legacy, in his music, and in his personas, who he was and the way he operated, is something that will continue to inspire people as long as people are around, I think. So give Blackstar a turn this week. If it's a favorite, if it's one you haven't listened to a while, if it's one that you haven't been able to bring yourself to terms to check out, it's time to drop the needle and to give it a go. And definitely check out the vinyl package. The artwork on this thing is incredible. I did forget to mention Jonathan Barnbrook, what he did as far as the image, which I think is actually credited to NASA. That star image seems kind of silly. It's just a 5-pointed black star, but I do appreciate the stylized spelling of Bowie in the stars below. And the vinyl package is great. It's the star opens up the vinyl, or it displays the vinyl, I should say. Let me rephrase that. And it's so funny too. I was one of those people. It took me a while to figure it out, but the record, the vinyl packaging, if you pull out the sleeve and if you hold it up, the gatefold's got this star field that will appear if you have a light source behind it, and I think that's really cool. It's the only Bowie record, and the first record, the only Bowie record that did not feature a picture of him, so I think that that's kind of fascinating as well. But just a beautiful package for a beautiful record from one of the most beautiful rock and roll stars that ever walked the face of the earth. Hope you guys enjoyed this segment. You guys take it easy. There will be album reviews dropping this week. We finally made it through the slow phase of the year. We got some really good stuff coming out. I'll throw out that Ethel Cain album review, get into that a little more detail. And I know I'm looking forward to Franz Ferdinand. And I'm looking forward to my good friends from Cranberry Suit releasing their first full-length record. Really excited for Mike and the guys. I talked to him today. He's been on the channel a couple times before. And if you're not familiar with him or their music, just good classic hard rock and sound. Sounds like he was branching out and doing some fun stuff, some stuff that I'm not familiar with, and some stuff that he hadn't really tried out before. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the balance of tracks, what the mix is like on this new record. So I'll keep you posted on all of that, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.